Anxiety and depression are on the rise, especially among young people. I'm probably not the first person to share that with you. You can see here, here, and here. The thing with anxiety and depression is they're these bizarre things where our mental states, our thought patterns influence our physical states, like what we feel inside, like actually biochemically what's happening in our body. And then what's happening in our body creates more mental states, and we end up in this bad feedback loop. So it's really complicated because you're always balancing these thoughts and these physical feelings, and it's hard to know what's what or what's causing what. Research does give us an indication that there are three primary drivers of anxiety and depression within our various sort of mental physical states. One is when we feel lonely and isolated. Two is when we feel like we don't have control, like we're doing the things we're told to do all the time as opposed to things that we choose to do. And three, interestingly enough, is when we don't get outside. When we're inside all day, not engaging with nature, not experiencing the air and the scenery, and just being engaged in stillness. So the thought occurs to me that school, especially like school now, like your schools that you're in, it's not really good for your mental health, right? Like, first of all, on the loneliness front, I mean, can't really blame school for this, but you got the phones thing, and you're not really engaging with people, in a traditional way, like the way humans did it for the last 10,000 years, like, face to face and talking and looking at people's eyes, etc. So the isolation part's there. And then all day you're like doing things that you're told to do. Most of it's not by virtue of your choice, right? Bell to bell to bell, you're going to different classes, etc. And you're inside a box all day. You start at 7:40 or 8 and you finish at 5:30, and especially during the winter, you don't really get to see the light of day that much. So that's weird, right? Like, we're not exactly setting you up for success in this regard. And that's I think concerning. Incidentally, Yaakov Avinu finds himself in a very similar position at the beginning of this week's Parsha. He too is alone, scared, on the road, running away from his brother Esav, who wants to kill him, heading off to his shady uncle Lavan. It's not a great time for Yaakov, and he has a moment of anxiety. Vayifga b'makom. He's frozen on the road, terrified. And in that moment, he encounters God. Right? And we all know the story. He's forced into sleep. He sets up the stones. He sees the malachim going up and down a ladder. When Yaakov wakes up from this encounter with God, he has a really interesting line. He says, "Achen yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh." I see God is in this place. V'ani lo yadati. I actually didn't know that. Right? So meaning he had his anxiety attack, so to speak. Right? He had his moment of fear, and in that moment he finds God. And he didn't know that he could find God in that way. Rav Clonimus Kalman Epstein, the Or Vashamesh, who's a Hasidic commentator, has a really interesting take on this pasuk, where he says, Yaakov knew God before, right? Before, when he was living in his parents' house. But he knew a very different God. He knew the God who just had expectations of him. There were things he was supposed to do, and he did them because he was a good Jewish boy, right? And the God he encounters on the road is a God who he needs in his life. The way the Me'or Shemesh describes it is, the God that Yaakov knew before this moment was the God of the yeshiva, right? Was the God of learning. And the God he encounters on the road is the God of tefillah. I've always had this thought that real tefillah, and I'm not talking about the obligation of davening, which is important to do, but the moments of tefillah when we really feel tefillah, the best way to think about that is where our moments of maximum need meet our moments of maximum lack of control. So we really need something in our lives, we desire something in our lives, and we really know we have no control over getting that thing. For example, like when your children are born, I think like every parent gets this intuitively, because like you love and care and want to protect these children of yours, but you really know you don't have any control. And as they get older, there's just less and less control over what happens. And those can be real, genuine moments of tefillah, because you're relating to God in a new way. You see God as necessary for you to find expression for these deep desires that you have and this deep feeling of insecurity and lack of control that you have at the same time. This moment of maturity for Yaakov is transformative, right? Where he just adjusts his relationship with God from being a relationship of, doing the right thing, expectations, and so on, to a relationship of real, genuine need, right? And desire to be close to God and desire to express his fears and anxieties to God. Back to school for a moment. So school's not really going to change. Look, I'd love school where we were outdoors and you were studying the things you want to study and your teachers were more like coaches encouraging you in your learning as opposed to sort of these authoritative figures giving you assessments all the time. I think that'll happen at some point, but it ain't going to happen while you're in school, right? You're going to be in this environment for the foreseeable future. What I think you can do, though, is even though you can't change the world around you, much like Yaakov really couldn't change the world around him, you can change how you relate to that world, right? You can change what you are looking for out of that relationship. So is the relationship, I'm just doing all the things I'm supposed to do, I'm checking all the boxes, or are you actively seeking to get the things you want to get out of the relationship? Like your friends. Like, are your friends the people that make you feel good and make you feel loved? Or are the friends your people you need to be friends with because they're like the popular people and you gotta be in that crew and you want to be part of that thing that's happening on Saturday night, and if you're not there, then who are you? Is that the relationship? Or is it just like, no, these are good people. These are people that make me feel good and these are people that make me feel loved? When you're in school, is it like, oh my God, I gotta do well in this course, I gotta get the most amazing grade because my whole future depends on it? Or are you saying, no, like these are actually interesting things and maybe some of it's less interesting than others, but I want to focus on the interesting stuff. I want to pursue the things that are interesting. I want to find a co-curricular or a club or something that's meaningful to me. And are you getting out? Like, are you going out and enjoying the outdoors and spending time walking and, making sure that you're connected to nature? Like, these are all things in your control. And it just takes a slight change in your relationship with the things around you. The requirements don't change, right? God didn't change, right, for Yaakov, but how Yaakov saw God changed just slightly, just from expectations to desire, right? Think about your relationship with school and your relationships with your friends. Are they all about expectations, or are they meeting your needs and your desires? Shabbat shalom, everyone.